Hey, so today we're going to be making a button. I'm using SDL, but this should be able to do it for really anything. So here I'm just setting up my SDL window real quick. It'll take a bit. So yeah, we're going to be making a button. It's going to have an image as a background, and it'll be able to detect when you click on it. When you click on it, it's going to be able to activate really any function you want it to. So that will be really useful for anything a button will be useful for. So you can use it for title screens, in-game things. I'm going to be making a visual novel, and that's basically just all buttons. So I'm going to be using it for that. So yeah, and again, I'm just setting up my window. Because we're going to be using an image as a background, we need to use SDL image, which I will set up later. If you don't know that, then you can watch carefully, I guess. So I'm done setting up my window. We're going to make a header file called structs.h. I'm going to be making the button structure that will contain an object, an image, and just the pointer to a function. So that'll be the function that gets activated when, or that you will set that gets activated when you click on it. We don't really need an object. The object is just going to be comprised of 2 vector 2s, or 4 floats, so the position and scale. You can see me setting up that right now. The object struct with a vector 2 position and a vector 2 scale. I add in a color right now, but we don't need that. That's not necessary. And this is just the vector 2 with which is 2 floats. Here we're going to make the image struct. That's just going to have some private stuff. So we're going to have an SDL surface. We're going to have an SDL texture in the private. Here I'm making sure to include SDL and type if endef struct_h defines struct_h as this whole file. This will protect against stuff like including too many times, because C++ isn't like that. In the public, we're going to have a char or a string that points to the file. We're going to get a function to get our surface that's just going to return our surface. Since it's private, and the same thing for our texture that just returns the private texture. We're also going to have an initialize function that takes in a renderer, because that's necessary to initialize a texture. So we're going to say image surface equals, load the image, and then the texture is create texture from image, that SDL function. And then we free the surface just to conserve on memory. Here I'm just downloading that SDL image, so you can get on GitHub, put all the files in. Alright, since we have all the files, we're gonna update our script to do /l SDL image. We're gonna include it in our files. And in our main file, we're just gonna include that structs.h. We're also gonna make a functions.h file, which I guess isn't necessary. That .h files aren't necessary, but I like it just for organization's sake. In our functions.h, we're going to include SDL, do the if endef thing just to make sure it's protected. We're going to make a function that creates an image, so that'll take in our renderer and the path to our image file. We just set all the things. So we create an image, we set the file to file, we set the render to renderer, and we output that, we return that, and then we do the same thing, or we render the image. So we take in a renderer and our image, and we need our position and scale. So we make a STL rect to render a copy of. We set all the rect parameters. So rect x equals pos x, rect y equals pos y, rect width equals scale x, and rect height equals scale y, and we render a copy of that rect. Then we make a create button function that'll take in an object, an image, just the things in our button. We do basically the same thing we did for create image. So we just make a button, make button object the object, make button image the image, and return that button. Then we do a render button with the render and a button. That'll just render the button image using the function we already did. And that's all that function really does. Unnecessary function, but it's nice to have. Okay, so in our main, I'm gonna be looking up a button image. You can make your own. I just wanted it to be a PNG, which is why it's taking a while. Because all these images are WebP, which is annoying. But just find a PNG image, or make your own, or you don't even need a PNG. But just find an image you like, or again, make it. So I found this one. It's alright. It works. So I just save that to a media folder. Then I initialize our button. So I create button, passing in an object, position 50-50, scale 50-50 for now. Actually, I'm gonna make it scale 50-150 to try to get that ratio that the button has. I did flip those numbers. I'll fix that later. Then I create an image with a renderer and the path to our image. So we do render button, passing in our renderer and our button. This happens because I accidentally added a color to our button, which is not in the struct. So I'm getting rid of that here. So you can see it's our button. The scale is just a bit messed up, so I'm fixing that, making it look a bit more pretty. Move it and scale it up. Cool. So now we have our button. We want to add the ability to click it. So I'm gonna have a vector for our mouse pause and just a bool to say if the mouse is clicked or not. This is because the function that tells us whether a mouse is clicked activates when it's down and up, so we need a bool to just do down. We do STL get mouse pause, and that takes in ints. So you could just make your vector2 for ints. I'm making a separate vector2 that uses ints instead. And then in our event, we're going to pull an event. And if that event is equal to the left button, we set click equal to not clicked. And we run the point collide, which we haven't yet made, for mouse vector 2 and the object we want to see if it's colliding with, in this case the button's object. So we're going to make that point collide function. It's going to take in an object and a vector 2, and it's just a bit of logic. I'll just let it play out. Really what I'm doing is testing if the point is less than the most right side of the object, if it's to the right of the most right side, and the same thing for the y's. Here I'm looking up, because I had to do this, how to activate or how to have a pointer to a function without having to know the inputs to that function, because we want to have a function that takes in inputs. It's going to be a bit annoying if we had to know what the inputs are beforehand. I found this online, so I'm just going to copy that because it's very useful. I don't really understand what it does. All I know is that it works. So we're going to do this. We're going to do the onPressed. We're going to do reinterpret cast as a void. And we're going to pass in a pointer to that, just any function. I'm creating a function just called say something. It'll do what its name says. It's going to print whatever you input to it. This does mean I have to include IOStream, but that's fine. Again, this button can do any function you want. Here, I'm going to type call function, which is a function that the thing we copied gives us. We're going to input the button's function and put in the parameters. We also need to type void in curly braces or carets. Be very careful with this because it doesn't complain if you don't put in the right parameter. I had some struggle with that here, which is why I'm fixing stuff. Something that doesn't complain is a bit scary because you don't know if it's going to go wrong. And we can see it's working. It's printing out whatever you put there. So yeah, we made a button. Thanks for watching.